All right, guys, we'll go ahead and stay in the NFL with some unfortunate news out of Cincinnati. As many of you have heard by now, first overall pick Joe Burrow suffered a season-ending knee injury during last week's home game against Washington. The star rookie quarterback was sandwiched by Montez Sweat and Jonathan Allen on a 3rd and 2 in the third quarter of the game. Burrow was carted off the field, and tests later revealed that he had a torn ACL, MCL, and other damage in his knee. Burrow had thrown for the 4th most yards by a rookie through 10 games in NFL history and was on pace to break Andrew Luck's rookie passing yards record. So, Drink, where do the Bengals go from here? And do you believe that this is the Bengals' fault for putting him in with somewhat of a subpar team around him?
Listen. Yes. The Bengals got fault, but then I guess you say Joe Burrow got fault too. Here's the deal: if I got drafted number 1 overall, and the team told me, in order for us to draft you number 1, we need to tell you something. Here's the disclaimer: our offensive line is not good. And let me backtrack. If Joe Burrow is this genius and this guy that I've been hearing all these good things about, that means he already did his research about the Cincinnati Bengals. So he knows what he's getting into. So me as an organization, when I come to you and I say, hey, man, we want to take you number 1, which means you're most likely going to play in year 1 because we don't have anyone behind you. We don't have the best assets around you as of right now, but we're working on it. 9 times out of 10, that player is going to say, I want to play. Like, we'll figure out the rest of it later. And here's the deal. When you have a chance to get a guy that you think can take your program to the next level, whether you got an offensive line or not, it's not your concern at that time. You're going to take that generational talent and you're going to draft him. Now the question is, once you draft this kid, what do? Do you sit him and let Johnny Bum crap throw the ball around until you get that offensive line to where you want it? Or do you play him where you got to play him? Because why? Because now you're going to have all the big money people behind you saying, and the fans saying, hey, why haven't we seen Joe Burrow yet? Why haven't we seen Joe Burrow yet? It's football. People are going to get hurt regardless. You can have the best offensive line in the world. Your quarterback still can get, snapped and dragged down the field. I'm a big component in this. You always take if you need a quarterback, you take the quarterback. You worry about the offensive line later. Why? You can get more offensive linemen. You think about it this year, Cincinnati is going to have a high pick. This is what it is. 2 years ago, they just took a left tackle. I'm guessing the left tackle ain't working out quite the way they need him to work out. And if I'm not mistaken, that best offensive lineman just got hurt in this game as well as Joe Burrow did. Oh, he didn't play, one of the two. So you're gonna have the means to get a better offensive line. So as far as the fault go or the blame go, it can go either way. It is what it is. This is a dangerous sport, and people get hurt. I'm not mad at the Bengals. I'm not mad at Burrow per se. It is what it is. I would say now that this didn't happen, now I start paying attention to the Cincinnati Bengals organization and say, what do you do from here? All right. Your future just got sandwiched and got hurt. How do you improve this offensive line? And it comes to a point to where if they don't improve this offensive line through free agency, through the draft this upcoming year, then Joe Burrow and his long road to recovery, because like we was talking about earlier, he got one of those injuries. It's going to take a while to come back. It is. Throughout that time of him doing his recovery, you as an organization got to be out there making him feel comfortable that he's coming back to a situation where he can be safe, be protected, and be able to quarterback for you in the future. But the one thing I would not do is go out and draft another quarterback. We ain't doing that. We ain't going to draft another quarterback. If we need another quarterback, that's what free agency for. Because the minute you draft another quarterback, you start turmoil within that locker room, within that team. And then this is how you go from being an okay team to being a floor mat to your coach getting fired, GM, and on, et cetera, et cetera. So to put a bow on it, man, listen, should the Bengals have a better offensive line? Yes. It's not like they didn't try. I've seen them draft offensive linemen. Some pan out, some do, some don't. It is what it is. It's the name of the game. You know what I'm saying? When you draft any player, it's a gamble. And and they seen that. But for what it's worth, listen, Joe Burrow been playing behind that offensive line all year. He seen he was making it work, just like most quarterbacks do in the NFL. Offensive line play is so porous in the NFL right now. You very rarely find. You could probably count on one hand how many teams got a really good offensive line because of all the CBA rules and now COVID. You just don't get the chance to do what you need to do as an offensive line. You don't get the reps. You don't get I forgot the word, but you don't get the chance to gel as an offensive line. The offensive line is one of those units where you need to gel. It's a 5-man movement to the left, 5-man movement to the right, 5-man movement to the front. You need to be able to gel. And because of the lack of practice time and because of the lack of getting ready, offensive line play is down across the NFL. So this is not uncommon, but at the end of the day, this is what you signed up for. Joe Burrow signed up for this, knowing he could get hurt, and it is what it is. So, like I say, my thing is, what do Cincinnati do from now? Like, how do you fix this now? Okay, your guy got hurt. You could have gave him better protection. How do you fix it now? That is what I'm looking for. And this is what will help Cincinnati's perspective of being a poorly ran franchise if they can, somewhat find some results to change our mind and say, hey, maybe Cincinnati, maybe they're not as bad as we think. But as of right now, our opinion, Joe Burrow, take your time, heal, see what the franchise is doing for you, and then we'll see in a year or two.
Yeah, I think I'll start where Drink ends. This is kind of oftentimes where you end up when you're a bad organization, from top to bottom. That's been the Bengals for, a long, long time, way before Joe Burrow arrived on the scene. And just to get one kind of, I think, ridiculous point out the way, I think you brought this earlier, and I'm not knocking you, per se, Cody, but the idea that if you have the top pick, do you have to have the requisite pieces in place for you to draft that guy? I just think that's a little ridiculous, because if you did have those pieces in place, you wouldn't have the number 1 overall pick. The Bengals got the number 1 overall pick because they stink, and they happen to be the worst team in football. And then you have this guy down at LSU, calm, cool, and collected off the 66 season or whatever with the national title and all the records, and the coach that, eats gravel for breakfast. You have that all going for you. And this is what happens. You get Joe Burrow. Now, and we understand coming in, though, that the Bengals still weren't a very good team. They just maybe have the most important position covered. And, looking at what he's done so far, Joe Burrow's been highly impressive. He's been to my mind, he's been carrying that team. And right, I think Drink's right. He's been playing behind that offensive line all season. He's been escaping a lot of pressure. He's been making plays outside the pocket, been moving around. He's been sacked the third most time. 32 times he's been sacked so far this year. The only quarterbacks who have been sacked more are Carson Wentz and Russell Wilson. And, there goes a perfect example for you right there. I mean, Russell Wilson, when are the Seattle Seahawks prioritize an offensive line? Probably never. So I think in some respects, you can look across the league in this regard. It seems that a lot of coaches in front offices, they're just looking at their quarterbacks and saying, well, you know what? I guess since we're paying you all this money, I guess on one hand you can say, well, maybe you'd invest in protecting him. But then on the other hand, maybe you can say, well, we're paying you all this money. Why don't you just run away from everybody and just make it happen? I don't know if that's what Cincinnati told Joe Burrow, but you think about, could Cincinnati have maybe done a little better picking Joe Burrow up in this draft? I mean, I guess you can make that argument. Maybe instead of drafting a T. Higgins, you try to build up that offensive line a little bit better. I think you drafted Jonah Williams with maybe the number 2 overall pick last season. I'm not particularly sure how that's going. But other than that, it doesn't seem to be like there's a whole lot of talent on that offensive line. So that's definitely something that they got to continue to build up down the line. But then you can also say, well, let's just say they did draft an offensive lineman with their 2nd-round pick and they didn't draft T. Higgins. Well, Joe Burrow, he's probably going to get sacked either way, because then he's going to have less receivers to get the ball to. So I mean, I would be more than happy to come in here and just lay it absolutely down on the Cincinnati Bengals because of how just in general how bad they are. I'm not sold on Zach Taylor as a head coach. I think just as a franchise, they've been a laughing stock for so long. But this is just one of those cases where I think, in retrospect, I think they made the right pick. They made the safe pick. I'm still a Tua guy. I think Tua will still wind up being the best quarterback in this draft class. But Joe Burrow was playing. He was playing fine. They had that surprise win against the Tennessee Titans a few weeks ago. We didn't see that coming. I've always, ever since watching him play at LSU, I've always thought his athleticism is quite underrated. That ability to run the ball is something that we can't ignore. But I do think Drink is absolutely right. The last thing you do right here is draft another quarterback, unless it's a depth guy that you're just a project type quarterback that you're looking for. You certainly don't. It looks like they're going to have at minimum a top 5 pick next year. You certainly don't rock the boat and draft a guy with your first round pick, to come in there and have a immediate quarterback controversy. But I do think maybe you got to look at maybe you got to look at, I guess, stabilizing that backup situation. You got Ryan Finley and Brandon Allen in there. I mean, we don't think neither of those guys are going to get it done for you. But I mean, just some of these things that you look at, some of these writers out here, and I'm not trying to call nobody out, but I mean, what?
Call them out. Call them out. Who you talking about?
I mean,
Go ahead, call them out.
I just see some things that just – I mean, I just find them to be laughable. I mean, you got this ESPN NFL Nation writer, Ben Baby. Well, I mean, what a hilarious name, up front. But this guy, the moment somebody gets hurt, now you want to bring – no one cared about the backup quarterback situation in Cincinnati until this happened. And now, now you know what Cincinnati got to do? They got to fix their backup quarterback situation. Like, that's going to make the difference. Not the offensive line, not the running game, not the defensive line. They still ain't got that many players that are impressive on defense. We got to get that backup quarterback situation. We really got to solidify that. That's going to be the difference. If we really had a Ryan Fitzpatrick, we could overcome this season-ending knee injury to Joe Burrow. We'd be fine. I mean, please stop. Just stop. But in the end, in the big picture, football is a dangerous game. Every player is one hit away from going down. Remember coming into the draft, the only reason Tua wasn't the top pick was because of injuries. And now, just as luck would have it, Joe Burrow was the guy that went down, and Tua just got beat up and battered by the Denver Broncos last week. He got sacked 6 times. He managed to survive it, but he's the one with the injury questions. It's just a case of bad luck for Cincinnati.
I tell you, Cincinnati, if you're listening, my man Blake Bortles is available. So if you want to fix your quarterback position to back up, give him a call. I'll say I brought this up mostly because you read around a lot and you see a lot of people bring up that very point. They say, Cincinnati go out there and drafting this kid and getting him killed, throwing him in there when they don't have the team ready. And I agree with you guys though. I think it is a silly argument. I think if you have a top pick and you have a chance to go get your guy, you go get your guy. You're going to worry about the rest of the crap down the road. I mean, like y'all said, if you're picking number 1 overall, your team probably sucks. There's almost no cases of your team being really good and also getting the top pick. I mean, I know the Chiefs and the Colts have kind of sort of did it where they were bad one year and then strategically tanked, whatever the case may be. But I think we all knew that Cincinnati wasn't the case. They had been kind of floundering for too many years, and they fired Marvin Lewis, and they had a new regime change, and things continued to kind of decline. They needed a new direction at quarterback. It really sucks, right? Because we had Herbert, Tua, and Burrow all playing great football. I mean, it was awesome. We had 3 of our rookie quarterbacks were all just balling out. I mean, Tua had just gotten going. I know he had, Denver kind of beat him up some, but I mean, for the most part, it was like, oh man, we got 3 guys really doing the thing like we thought. It was fun to watch, and now, of course, we lost Burrow for the season. And what's scary, for Cincinnati is this injury sounds bad. I mean, this isn't just a normal torn ACL. I mean, we've had plenty of guys have that happen. They've bounced back. Even somewhat athletic quarterbacks. I think Sean Watson had one a year, his rookie season. He bounced right back. He's clearly fine. But this sounds more serious than your average run-of-the-mill knee injury, and it honestly it has some vibes of the Carson Palmer injury, and we know that he was never the same after that injury. So I think for Cincinnati, you were very worried right now. It's very troublesome to hear what's happened to Burrow. You know, and you guys make the point about your line not being great, and you're absolutely right. Russell Wilson, he's a great example. He's been top 5 in the league in sacks, time sacked for every year of the last 5 years. He's been one in some years, but if not one, at least 2, 3, or 4, or 5. I mean, it's every year. And he's been fine. You know, so you're right. It is more of a crapshoot. It's just one bad play. I mean, how many times we hear of dudes in practices tearing their knees up, like in practice, not even in contact. They just put their foot in the ground and it just didn't work right. And you know, so it's not something that I guess you can really pin on, you know, being hit. But obviously, if your offensive line is terrible, then you're going to increase your odds a little bit. But Cincinnati's offensive line actually wasn't really terrible. They've been about, they're still bottom third, but they're like the top of the bottom third. You know, they're coming up towards the middle of the pack over the last few weeks. And some of that is Joe Burrow making better decisions, getting the ball out quicker. It is not just the offensive line. It's not a zero-sum game. You're not going to sit there and block forever type thing. The only pushback I do have is I would be considering a quarter. The only consideration for quarterback I would say is if you have the third pick, there are a lot of really good quarterbacks coming up. It's not a 1 or 2 quarterback show anymore. It's not just Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and that's it. I mean, you've got some projects like Trey Lance, you've got Zach Wilson, you got Kyle Trask, you've got Mac Jones, and that's just to name a few of guys that have kind of snuck into that top round or potentially in the top round. I don't think I would do it, but it's a consideration you would have to make as an organization. I guess the doctors are saying, hey, this is pretty bad. I mean, he not be able to play for more than a year. Remember how long it took Teddy Bridgewater to recover from a similar injury? It took him a while. Now, he didn't have a starting job waiting for him. I guess we don't really know if he would have been a jump right back in starter, you know, as soon as he was healthy type thing. But if not in the first round, I think that you have to consider maybe by the third round or fourth round. You're talking about guys like Kellen Mond, Brock Purdy, you know, Tanner Morgan, maybe. I mean, guys that definitely are going to be drafted, just not, you know, in the first day of the draft. I would consider strongly that, or if not that, spending an inordinate amount of money in the free agency market, trying to go for one of the better free agent quarterbacks that are going to come out. Maybe your Cam Newton type guys, trying to really go above and beyond what you probably would have done, which is go out and sign just a backup, just a guy that we know is a backup. That's the other discussion. I don't know. Maybe you trade for somebody, you know, I don't know, a Gardner Minshew type guy, a guy that's, you know, just on the fringe. Maybe you can make that kind of. I would be at least. My point is, I guess I would be considering an inordinate like commitment to the position, not full on, not maybe using my first round pick, but I would be considering some kind of commitment to that position beyond just this, just in case that it's going to take him a while to get back, or there's going to be some long-term health issues. But let's hope not. You know, Tua just had a Bo Jackson type injury. He's already recovered. He's playing great football. Medical science has come so far. So let's hope that's the case. Let's hope we see him next year. He's a lot of fun to watch.